So today I'm going to be showing you how to find all 6 trig functions using the unit circle. So let's dive right into it. So example 1 says to find all 6 trig functions of 180 degrees, which is located right here, and using this coordinate point, we'll be able to solve for sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So, starting with sine, we remember that sine is equal to the y value of the coordinate point. So in this case, sine would be 0. And cosine is equal to the x value of the coordinate point. So cosine would be equal to -1. And then tangent is equal to y over x. So in this case, it would be 0 over -1, which is possible. So it would just equal 0. So moving on to cosecant. Cosecant is just a flip-flop of sine. So 0 over 0 is just 0. Okay, so for secant, it's going to be the flip-flop again, or the reciprocal. So it's going to be -1 over 1. So it's just going to be -1. And then cotangent is also a flip-flop of tangent. However, it would be -1 divided by 0, and you can't divide by 0, so we would just leave it as undefined. So, moving on to example 2, it says to find all 6 trig functions of 390 degrees. However, we can't find 390 degrees as it's not on the unit circle, so we find the coterminal angle of 390 degrees by subtracting 360 degrees and getting 30 degrees. So now we can solve for everything. So starting with sine again, we can see that here's 30 on the unit circle, and there's the coordinate points. So we'll be using the same technique as before. So sine in this case would equal 1/2. Cosine would be the square root of 3 over 2. And then for tangent, you would do y over x again, and that would be 1/2 over the square root of 3 over 2. And the 2's would cancel out, leaving you with 1 over the square root of 3. But you have to simplify, so you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 3 to get the square root of 3 over 3. So for cosecant, it's the same thing as before, it's just flipped. So 2 over 1 would equal to 2. And then for secant, it would be 2 over the square root of 3, and you'd have to simplify again. So you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 3, and you get 2 square root of 3 over 3. And then for cotangent, you would take the square root of 3 over 2 over 1/2, and the 2's would still cancel out, and you'd be left with the square root of 3. So finally, we have example number 3. So we're finding all 6 trig functions of 19 pi over 6, but like the example before, we have to find the coterminal of 19 pi over 6 because it does not exist on the unit circle. So we have to subtract 2 pi from this. However, 2 pi does not have 6 on the denominator, so we multiply 2 pi over 1 times 6 over 6 to get 12 pi over 6. So we subtract 12 pi over 6 from 19 pi over 6 to get 7 pi over 6, which is located right here on the unit circle. So using the same processes as before, we'll be finding all the trig functions. So starting with sine again, we can see that here it's going to be -1/2, and cosine will be negative square root of 3 over 2, and tangent will be -1/2 over negative square root of 3 over 2. So the 2's still cancel out, and you're left with -1 over negative square root of 3. So you use the same process as here, and you simplify. So that leaves you with square root of 3 over 3 as the negatives cancel out and become positive. So moving on to cosecant, it's the same process as before. So 2 over 1 Negative 2 over 1 would give you negative 2. And then negative 2 over the square root of 3, using the same simplifying process as here, would give you negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. And for cotangent, you would have negative square root of 3 over 2 over 1/2 negative, and the 2's would cancel out, and you'd be left with negative square root of 3 over negative 1, and the negatives would cancel out, becoming positive, leaving you with the square root of 3. So I hope you learned something from this. This has been finding all 6 trig functions using the unit circle. Thank you.